Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 5 of APCV 371, Introduction to Artificial Intelligence and Cybersecurity. And this week's topic is search optimization and constraints. So just to give you an overview of what will be covered this week, this module focuses on a couple of topics. First, on improving search efficiency, and then also introducing constraints that reflect real-world cyber limitations. And so some of the topics that will be covered in the main lecture will be pruning, bounded search, and optimization techniques alongside constraint-based modeling. And so these ideas support prevention and compliance tasks in cybersecurity. And so you have several chapters of reading, and the specific topics are section 3.4, refinements to search strategies, and then 3.5, bounded search and optimization, and then finally 4.1, posing a constraint satisfaction problem. So your assignment this week will reflect each of those topics you'll see in a minute. And the second part of the lecture that I'll be loading a little bit later will cover the PowerPoint slide set that you see here. I went ahead and uploaded the PowerPoint slide set, and then I'll be uploading the recorded lecture a little bit later today. And then finally, you have an assignment this week, and it's posted, and I have it open here, so I'll go over it. And this is basically, it's a written assignment, like an applied assignment, kind of similar to your first assignment. So I'm not actually having you do programming of any of this. I'm having you work out just the application of each of these concepts. So basically, assignment 2 covers optimized search and constraint modeling in cybersecurity. And so basically, it just gives an overview, mentions that cybersecurity tasks largely are search problems carried out under strict limits on time, cost, risk, and policy. And then as systems scale, exhaustive search becomes impossible, and intelligent behavior depends on optimization and constraints, which is what you're going to learn about in the main lecture for this week. And so in this assignment, you're going to analyze a realistic cybersecurity scenario and explain how search optimization techniques and constraint satisfaction modeling shape cyber decision making. And so, like I was trying to explain, it kind of says right here, this is a conceptual and analytical assignment. You're not asked to implement algorithms or write code. In this course, it focuses a lot more on the conceptual ideas and some analysis, applying and analysis of it. And then if you later take the second course, it's APCV 471, then you'll get a lot more into implementing these types of concepts in code and so on. So that's just to kind of give you a heads up for those of you planning to take the second course, which, by the way, is going to be offered in the fall, and I'll be teaching it. So I'd be very happy to see all of you or many of you in that course in the fall. So let me just scroll down to the individual parts of the assignment. So the first part is where you're going to address cybersecurity as a search problem. So basically says choose one cybersecurity activity that can reasonably be modeled as a search problem. And I've given you some examples here, but indicated also you're not limited to those examples. So you can absolutely think of another cybersecurity activity that you would like to model as a search problem. That's completely up to you. Or you can choose one of the ones that I've suggested here. And then in a short narrative, then you're asked to answer these specific questions. So explain what the search space looks like in your chosen scenario, why an exhaustive search is infeasible in practice, at least 2 search optimization techniques that would realistically be used. So for example, pruning, bounded search, heuristics, prioritization. So remember, this week's material, part of the lecture this week, is building on what we covered last week when we did sort of core topics of search. So as you're doing your assignment, you should definitely go back through the slides and lectures from the previous week as well. When we started, I believe that's when we started chapter 3. Yeah. And some of these topics were also covered last week. So you'll answer those questions and you'll focus on why these techniques are necessary, not how they are implemented. Because remember, like the note up here had said, this is a conceptual and analytical assignment. So that's part 1. Then for part 2, you're going to do your constraint satisfaction model. And that's covered in the beginning of chapter 4. Sorry, I was just scrolling down to remind myself what the remaining parts of the assignment were. Okay, so part 2, like I said, is where you're going to develop a constraint satisfaction model, a conceptual model of it. And so you're going to model a cybersecurity policy or operational task as a CSP, a constraint satisfaction problem. And in the lecture and in your reading of section 4.1, you'll see how that's defined and examples of it. And again, you may choose any appropriate cyber context, and then I list several that you could choose from. And again, if you can come up with one on your own that isn't listed here, and you're sure that it, would be suitable for expressing as a constraint satisfaction problem, then feel free to do that. That would be fine. And then you're told everything you need to include in your CSP model. So you have to clearly define variables, domains, hard constraints, and soft constraints. And then I give a little more details and leading questions on what that includes. But I'll leave you to watch part 2 of the lecture with the content from the slides, where I'll be going over these terms and explaining them. And then you can come back to the assignment. And when you read through this, I think you'll understand this much better. So that's part 2. And just some notes at the bottom. For each constraint, briefly explain why it exists and what would happen if it were violated. Formal notation is not required, but clear, structured explanation is expected. And then part 3 is pretty much reflections. So it's reflections on trade-offs and risk. So in a short reflective section, address the following: what trade-offs are encoded in your constraint model? And I believe we talked about trade-offs a bit in last week's lecture as well. Who benefits from these constraints and who bears the risk? And how could poorly chosen constraints lead to worse security outcomes? So you'll want to answer those questions. Actually, if I remember correctly, in your first assignment, I think you also reflected on trade-offs. So it's the same idea here. And so this section should demonstrate thoughtful reasoning about the real-world consequences of automated decision-making in cybersecurity systems. And so again, it's a 3-part assignment. And the first one is modeling a cybersecurity activity as a search problem. The second part is modeling a cybersecurity policy or operational task as a constraint satisfaction problem. And then the third is a short reflection on trade-offs and risk. And so some guidelines, length roughly 3 to 5 pages, double spaced. Honestly, I'm less concerned about, you know, the length than I am about that you have, you know, thoroughly addressed what you're asked for in each section. So that's just to give you a guideline of roughly, you know, how many pages it would typically take to answer this. But if you find that yours is taking longer in order to cover everything, that's fine. And if yours is on the shorter length, but you're sure you've covered everything, that's fine too. In other words, I'm saying I don't grade you on the length, I grade you on the content, and the thoroughness of it. So these are just guidelines. And format, make sure you have clear section headings corresponding to parts 1 through 3. Just keep it organized. And diagrams are optional and not required. And again, you won't go into actual like pseudocode or implementation. So this is mostly a written assignment, and only if you if you feel you have some kind of diagram that helps you express what you're trying to say, you're certainly allowed to include it, but it's not required. And use plain language and complete sentences. That's the main thing. I want to make sure I understand, you know, or I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to demonstrate your understanding of each of these concepts. And if I can read it and understand it, and you're correctly addressing it, then that's what I'm looking for. And again, no code equations or pseudocode are required. And then evaluation criteria. I may edit this. I don't think we discussed AI in this assignment, so I'm not sure why I left that in the evaluation criteria. But otherwise, I think the rest of the evaluation criteria are correct. So yeah, basically you've, oh, that's right. I haven't posted grades on assignment 1. I was gonna say you've seen the grading, but that's not true. So regarding your first assignment, I have started to look through those, but I didn't, or I've started to grade them, but I didn't finish grading them yet. So I will be trying to get those grades posted for you in the next day or two. So that way, you know, if I have any feedback for you, you'll see it there. So be looking out. Be looking out for the grades on those, and then yeah, I'm gonna revise this evaluation criterion note because I'm afraid that was left over from previous assignment. Everything else though is edited correctly, so I apologize for that. Hopefully by the time you access the assignment, I will have fixed that. And so that's basically it. That's what I'm looking for in this assignment. And then, like I said, the actual video with the lecture going over these slides, I'll have posted a little bit later today within the next couple hours. And then if any questions come up this week, as you're doing your assignment, feel free to email me and I'll get back with you. And then before I end this part of the lecture, I'll just ask for anyone attending live. Do you have any questions?
No, I think you covered everything thoroughly.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for attending, and good luck to everybody, and I will hopefully see you all next week.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, one thing before I leave, I sent you an email about a letter of recommendation. I was wondering if you got a chance to take a look at that.